Good morning and welcome to Wombs with a View, Maternal Musings with Jenny and Mika. It's Friday morning. Thank you to everybody who's watching or who will watch on the replay shortly after. My name is Jenny.
And I'm Mika.
So today we're going to, as we often do, we're going to talk about something that is seemingly quite heavy. And as always, our goal at the end of these shows is to leave it feeling a little bit lighter. So today the topic is Caesarean birth. And this is something that both Mika and myself as birth educators, as hypnobirthing educators, we do talk about, we do come across. It ends up being something that, especially when we're pregnant, we want to avoid even thinking about. Those are the chapters in the book that parents tend to even avoid reading. Because of course it is especially an emergency, and we'll talk about what that word even means in the hospital in most cases, but it's not part of the plan, right? For some people, cesarean birth is part of the plan, but for the majority of people, it's not part of the plan. So we don't put it in our birth plan too. We therefore, just like another good example is premature babies. Sometimes we don't even want to read about that because we're sure it's not part of our plan. So today we're going to walk you through some of the history of cesarean birth, some of the stats. We'll give you some stories and anecdotes and why it happens and or why it may happen, how to possibly avoid it, and we'll leave you on a happy note. Promise. If you are watching live and you have had a cesarean birth or you are pregnant and you have questions, please feel very, very free to type in the comments and we'll read them out and answer you the best that we can. So I personally have not had a cesarean birth. I have been as a birth doula to cesarean births, and I have supported women in postpartum as a doula who have had cesarean births. But I'm going to throw the mic over to Mika, the ear pods over to Mika, and we'll see what she has to say from personal experience as well as some research that she's dug into.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, so for my personal experience, my second birth was a cesarean birth, and it was not my plan. My first birth was a vaginal birth followed by midwives and was a very positive experience. And when I was gearing up towards the last weeks of my pregnancy with my second child, with my daughter, I learned that she was breech. And that kind of threw me into a long journey of trying to help her flip and also realizing that it's not all in my hands. I can create space, I can do all these different techniques, but at the end of the day, she's choosing how she wants to be born. And the hospital where I was associated with, the only way to birth a breech baby was by cesarean. So I didn't even have that choice. But I do want to share, and I'm actually not going to go into that birth story right now, maybe more to come. But overall, I had a positive experience, and part of what I do as a birth doula, when this comes up as an elective, which means that it's a planned cesarean, or as an emergency cesarean, is really to help my families, my clients walk through the situation in the most safe and calm way as possible, because no matter how birth shows up, it's still a birth and your baby's still going to be born and you're becoming parents, and doing it gently is really a big part of what we wish for you.
So, and we can say, I'll cut you off because then you're going to talk a lot. And I'm used to talking a lot. I need something to talk about.
Go really, for it.
We used to say so often in the birth education classes that we would teach, there are studies that have shown that women can come away from a cesarean birth experience feeling incredibly empowered and really, really positive about their birth experience because of informed consent and because of through the entire process they knew what was going on, versus, maybe a vaginal birth, no medication, very little interventions, but you can still walk away from that kind of birth feeling like birth just kind of happened to you. So a cesarean birth absolutely does not equal feeling demoralized or no power. And we definitely have real life examples of families that we've supported recently where we really watch all of those studies kind of come to life and be true with clients and with families who've had wonderful experiences recently, feeling incredibly supported by the birth staff, by their doula Mika on the phone in tech support. So
yeah, and in camera support. I was specifically, I know what you're talking about. I was taped to the bed. The nurse brought tape, and I was taped to
Beautiful.
the bed. Wow.
Beautiful.
So I was on camera, and I know that eye contact in this case was really helpful, and I was present for that for 13 hours on video. So that sometimes happens too. So before we walk you through more experiences and stories, I want to go back to the history because I find they're so important to kind of know where we're coming from. And there's a lot. I was reading before the show, I was reading about this, and there's so much information, and I'm actually going to give you just a little bit of it. And this comes from the US National Library of Medicine. So during the evolution of cesarean section, and I'm reading this from a piece of paper just to say, cesarean sections has meant different things to different people at different times. The indication for it to have changed dramatically from ancient to modern times, despite rare references to the operation on living women. So in the past, just to say, like in the 1500s, cesareans were only performed when women were not alive. So they tried to save the babies, basically. This was conducted either to avoid and save baby's life, or to basically for religious matters. So if both died during birth, then you would, this is heavy stuff, right? But I want to talk about it anyway. So you would basically bury them separately. But above all measures and all resorts, this operation was not intended to preserve the mother's life in the past. It's not until the 19th century that it became possible to really have a cesarean and keep the mothers alive. And I think that's one of the roots why we're so scared of this.
Mm-hmm.
And also, kind of to connect to that, that this is full-on abdominal surgery. Like the risks that come with C-sections are often not talked about enough. And really, this is not something to take lightly. And that's why we want to avoid any unnecessary cesareans. But when it's life-saving, and by the WHO, so the World Health Organization, we talk about 10 to 15% of the births, and it can be even lower, just to say 5%. We talk about 95% of birth to be vaginal and healthy. And with these stats, we look around the world and we see that 30%. And in some places like Brazil, it's skyrocketing. It's like up in 90. It's really mind-blowing to think that cesareans become the way to birth your baby. So coming back to a third of hospital births end in a cesarean. And the reasons for a C-section could be failure to progress. And I just want to talk about this for a moment, because failure to progress, FTP, there's another way of looking at FTP, which is fear, tension, pain. Do you want to say a word about that, Jenny?
It's definitely something that we've been talking about for years, even predating our work as hypnobirthing educators. Mika and I, as yoga teachers, we're teaching about the connection between the fear response and what that does hormonally, what that does physically to our body, where we clench up the jaw, we clench up the pelvic floor. The more scared we are, the more tense we become, the more we feel pain. When we relax and are feeling in a safe place and know that everything is okay, the entire body, everything is relaxed. We can even experience contractions or surges. Even in my own personal experience, it's not something you register as pain. It's a sensation that can be observed. But when the fear is there, the pain feels very, very real.
And it builds up. It's a cyclical situation. The more we're afraid, the more tension, the more pain, the more we fear the next contraction, the next surge that's going to come. So we really have two amazing modalities or methods out there today that can help us in this kind of situation. So we just mentioned hypnobirthing, and here's Mary Mongan's book that is the base of the course that we teach. And there's also spinning babies. And lately, this book came out just a couple of months ago, Changing Birth on Earth by Gail Tully. And the title here is The Midwife and Nurse's Guide to Using Physiology to Avoid Another Unnecessary Cesarean. And when we allow physiology to come first, when we use gravity and movement and creating more space for the baby in the pelvis to come down, to move through the birth canal, we can avoid an unnecessary cesarean. We can avoid that situation where it becomes on the chart FTP, failure to progress. That's one reason. And one of the main reasons that we want to lower the percentage of C-sections is by using these methods and helping out our clients. And other things, you just mentioned that we're both yoga teachers, so we come with a wealth of experience on how to navigate that. Another reason a C-section can happen, and this is for a good reason, is if the baby, the fetus, is having distress. So fetal distress, those are the few very rare times where you would be whisked to a C-section. And I've been to so many births, and I've never actually seen that happen. Usually, when a C-section is called, when we've tried everything possible in the birth room, and there's still a reason to go for a C-section, there's time. There's even time to hand express colostrum. In some hospitals, after the C-section, the mother goes to the general OR for recovery for 2 hours. The father takes the baby to the postpartum ward, and then the dad can give the first colostrum to the baby that's been collected from the mother. And many a times when I was still second support person and allowed to be at the hospital before the pandemic, I would help the mothers hand express, collect the milk, run up to the postpartum ward, give it to the dad to be able to give it to the baby. And in those moments, I felt like the golden barrier. I was taking this golden milk to the babies after having a C-section and kind of closing that loop and connection. Because even when we're separated from our babies after birth, we're still connected. We're connected through our hearts, we're connected through our milk. So there's things that we can do there to support ourselves and our babies if need be. Another reason for C-section would be a breech baby, like I mentioned from my own experience. And my biggest takeaway is that we need more trained medical caregivers that have the hands-on, or I would say hands-off, because a big part of breech birth is actually hands-off, experience to safely birth breech babies. And there's a huge comeback. We've had quite a few years where in most places in the world it was considered more safe to have a cesarean if your baby was breech. And now we're seeing more and more voices coming up in the birth world and all around the world, actually, who are calling for more experienced, trained doctors and midwives in helping.
Well, really what it is, right? That's what makes it, that's where the danger is. It's not that baby actually is breech, which is, feet or bum down. It's that the doctors so rarely see it because we've been doing automatic cesarean for so long.
Yeah, so they lack the experience and confidence to actually support that in a safe way.
But there are definitely here in Montreal, I know a few moms who have had amazing vaginal breech births recently, and there are certain doctors who are very well known for it. And it absolutely doesn't mean that if you find out that baby is breech, you will need a cesarean. It's very circumstantial.
It is, and Saint Justin and St. Mary's offer that in Montreal, so that's good to know. And that you can always even transfer to those hospitals if you're being followed by a doctor in a different hospital, if you are really interested in trying for a vaginal breech. So that's important information, and another way to lower the percentage of C-sections that we're seeing. I want to talk about the positive note. So if a C-section, if a cesarean birth becomes part of your reality, it's really, really helpful to, as Jenny started off our show today, to know what to expect. So I want to talk you through the different motions, what happens. So usually the doctor will recommend this to you. If it's not a full-on emergency, they'll come in and have a conversation with you. And one of the biggest things I think mothers or birth givers need to hear in that moment is that we've tried everything and you've done everything possible to birth your baby vaginally. And this is now the decision that will keep you and baby safe. So as a doula in those situations, I've sometimes even kind of helped the medical care providers to realize how important it is to acknowledge that. And it makes such a big difference than feeling that something is done to you, than to feel that you are involved and seen and heard, and then letting you know what's going to happen. And in my last Rock the Cradle childbirth education class that I finished teaching this week, I was talking about that, and one of the mothers opened her eyes and said, I don't want to know if I'm going to have a C-section. I don't want to know what they're going to do to me. So for some people, it means that they just want to be acknowledged. They don't need to have all the information. But I can say from my own experience that one of the things that helped me have a positive C-section was that the doctor let me know exactly, you're going to go into the OR. There's going to be lots of lights. There's a lot of staff that comes in to a C-section. It's not just the nurse and the doctor. There's the anesthesiologist that you're going to meet first that's going to see that you're well frozen for surgery. There's the nurse that is there for you. There's the nurse that's there for the baby. There's 2 doctors. So there's the staff doctor, and then there's the doctor that supports the main doctor in surgery. So there's 2 doctors. There's a pediatrician that shows up in the room. And have you counted how many people I've just mentioned? It's a huge crowd, actually, in that way. And one of the big things that help us keep C-sections safe is keeping them sterile. So the staff is on one side, and then you would be on the other. There are places in the world now where the curtain that is pulled up between you and your belly is transparent and you can see everything. There's even places where there's this hole where you can reach the baby through once the baby's born. These are all ways to allow the situation to be more centered on the experience of the birth giver, and to realize how important that those moments are in the bonding and connection with the baby. And the babies are born quite fast in a C-section. So after you're frozen and you're going into the actual operation, the baby comes out in the first few minutes. And you can ask for delayed cord clamping. It is possible. You can delay. And with my baby, she was placed on my thighs for 5 full minutes until the pulse, in her case, and before birthing the placenta, because in a C-section, the placenta is also birthed at the same time in many situations. Baby comes out, placenta comes out, but here everything was delayed. So it was really a gentle birth for my baby in that way. And then she came to me for skin to skin. It's another thing. Babies don't need to be whisked away. Only if they're having trouble breathing or there's any kind of situation where they need support. But often that's not the case, and they can come to you for skin to skin and request that and ask for it to linger. So it's not just a minute and the baby's taken away. Baby can be with you for a while there. And that's something to request. These are the birth wishes.
So doesn't that seem much more, just in hearing Mika, hearing you speak about how like as a doula, even though I've been there for cesarean births, I've not been in the actual room. I've not witnessed a live cesarean myself. Mom has gone, and I've waited for her on the other side. But just the way that you speak about it, how reassuring and how positive and sweet it actually can be. It's not a disaster. It's to get out of our minds of cesarean birth being the worst possible outcome for a birth. It's just not the case. And I can say from my side, not having experience, when I support these moms in postpartum, they're like superheroes. Like as intense the journey is to have a vaginal birth, when I see a woman after she's experienced a cesarean birth, I feel like they're in this whole other special, not elevated necessarily, but it's really this place of awe for me of, wow, she's gone through this and she's healing from something quite incredible. I have nothing but the highest respect for people who have gone through this. You know, in the postpartum period, it does not make things easier. You know, it is really, it ups the difficulty for you. Have a hard time holding baby, lifting baby. You can't pick stuff up. Placing baby for breastfeeding becomes challenging. Breastfeeding, for a number of reasons, also can be quite challenging for baby and for mom after cesarean. So I look at these women with like just awe of, wow, Wow,
Because
what a
you're
birth.
healing, yeah, you're healing from abdominal surgery and taking care of a newborn at the same time. So you're definitely a hero in my mind. That's huge. And I think I just want to go back. Like, this is maybe a shout out for the medical staff. Having a nurse or a doctor acknowledge you during the C-section and not just talking about, this is your work and this is your everyday thing. And often they just, on the other side of the curtain, they chat and they talk. But taking the time to make eye contact with the birth giver, to talk to her, to see how she's doing, it goes such a long way. It makes such a big difference. Instead of, and I know many of you do this very often, but still, that human connection, that social support is what makes the experience more positive, is what can offer a lifetime of memories of something gentle instead of traumatic. So that is a
Mhm.
huge kind of, I find, a reminder of how important we are in our roles when we support people who are giving birth. Yeah. And can I end? Because I supported, I'm on call at the moment. One of my moms is in labor right now. And it doesn't have to do anything specifically with the topic right now, but I still feel that it's valuable to share because it's kind of fresh from my last night experience. I got a phone call at 2 a.m. And she was on the other side of the phone having really frequent contractions and thinking. It was still early on in her labor, so she was already thinking of epidural, but the staff said, we can't give you one yet, but we can offer you morphine. So she called me, her doula, to say, what can I do? Like, is this a good idea? I haven't even thought of morphine before. What are my options? And she's one of our hypnobirthing mamas. So she did the course with us a little while back. And I asked her, do you want me to read some of the texts? We call them scripts. And she said yes. So I was sitting here in the same room at 2 a.m. in the morning, reading for about half an hour. I was reading the scripts to her. And I listened to the shift in her experience,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
could hear her voice change. And then the
Mhm.
really cool thing that I got early in the morning was a picture that her partner took of the monitor, where you could see the baseline of the contractions change. It was really high just before she called me and I started reading the hypnobirthing scripts. And then after, she was able to relax. So the contractions are still strong, are still happening, but she found her place of deep relaxation. And it really comes from practice. So she didn't hear those scripts from me the first time. It was something familiar, something her body knew how to relate to, knew how to go into deep relaxation. And all I needed to do was just sit here and read them to her in a calm voice. And she did, and she ended up not needing any kind of extra medication for this phase of her labor. So I'm so grateful for Mary Mongan and the hypnobirthing method. Like,
Absolutely.
this was one of those moments where I say, wow.
Wow, thank you. That's an amazing story. I look forward to catching up with her. And I guess on that note, we can say so. As you guys might know, and as you'll find out here soon, if you don't know, Mika and I are hypnobirthing educators here in Montreal. And every month or two, we start a new session, a new 5-week session of group hypnobirthing classes. And our next session starts on Monday. Look at that little ticker down there. Monday, May 17th. The classes are 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And it's a group we've had between, I think we've had an average of 8 couples each time, so it's definitely for both both people in the couple. If that is the case for you, it's to help the birthing partner with all kinds of wonderful tools. So Mika might be sitting there on the phone at 2 a.m. reading the scripts, or it might be the person right beside you in the birth room reading those scripts. So it's definitely for the couple to learn. We have a free info session coming up on May 5th at 7 p.m. So if hypnobirthing is something that you think you might be interested in, please reach out. You can get a hold of us at info@hypnobirthing.com, or on our Facebook page. You can find our phone number as well. And well, it's nice. Okay, we have a little comment here, but Shiva, that's not hello Shiva. We were hoping
so
that you would maybe.
Thank you for joining us.
That's great. I was hoping there was some kind of juicy story there to go with it. She's so funny. So thank you guys very, very much for watching. I don't know, Mika, if there's anything else that you wanted to end on. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. So every second week we're here. Live on Facebook and on YouTube at 9:30 in the morning. I am so happy that so many people tuned in actually this early. I'm surprised there were a number of people watching. Let's see, we have one more comment here. She said, I know it's late. I just thought, oh my God, she's still not saying it. Shiva, give us something more substance here. She's chit-chatting, but if you didn't pop in or if you're popping in late, you can always leave all kinds of comments and we'll happily respond to them even though it's not live.
And Jenny, I just want to say one more thing about our topic. So if you have a belly birth, a C-section, a cesarean birth, know that it doesn't have to be something that creates trauma in your life, that you can have a gentle experience. And being well prepared and being well supported is, I find, one of the ways to make a difference for you. So reach out. We're here for you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.